Hey, it is Tuesday, but essentially Monday because we were both off yesterday.
Sort of.
Sort of. I mean, you were off, probably.
You were.
I was still working. But we're going to do an extended weekend roundup. We'll cover President's Day and what was the day in Canada? Family Day?
Family Day.
President's Day and Family Day also. Lots of stuff going on. What are we covering today, my friend?
Okay, well, we're going to talk a little bit about what's coming out. So we got Gnosis, Worldcoin, MetaDAO, Yuga Labs. What are they doing? What are they acquiring? Why are they relevant right now? Why are they more relevant than they have been? We're going to talk about that, and then we're going to actually just switch into a little bit more of the finance realm. So how you might use emojis to forecast your, get rid of the candlesticks, just move into emojis. And then we're going to look at other crypto investment and what's going on with the halvening.
Oh man, we got a lot to cover. I'm excited about most of this, with the exception maybe of Worldcoin, but super exciting. All right, let's go. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Okay, we're back. Before we get into this card, quick shout out to our friends at Tashi for the merch. Thanks for
the different networks even.
Look at you. We're representing different areas of the space today. Woo-hoo. All right, let's start with this Gnosis card. I'm stinking excited about this, but go ahead.
Okay, we have talked about this a little bit before because they announced that they were going to do it, but now it has actually been unveiled. So in case you're not too familiar with Gnosis, they are a DeFi company that has a lot of different solutions, including prediction markets and digital wallets and that kind of thing. But with their self-custody card, you're going to be able to use your crypto at more than 80 million Visa merchants worldwide, which is a huge deal.
So this is pretty exciting. I'm trying to find, I had another card. I'm trying to find what it was called.
Well, this is free for early users. Europeans are the first ones. They're expanding to the States next. And then they're looking at Brazil, Mexico, Singapore, Hong Kong. So if you are in Europe, you should go apply for your Gnosis card right now just to be an early adopter so that you can get it for free with limited price outs, that kind of thing. But the idea is that you can actually spend your crypto in real world, and it doesn't have to just be with some sort of approved vendor. But the idea is that you'll be able to use it at any Visa point of sale.
This is the version I had from 2021.
Yeah.
Monolith. It was the first of these that existed. And it's amazing. So Gnosis being a much more well-known brand and have really deep connections to pretty much every ecosystem, given their safe products and many of the things that they've done over the years. This is incredible. Monolith was awesome because, again, you could hold your crypto and you could set sell priority. So like when you made a transaction, it would sell stables first and then whatever. It's pretty neat. I think it's meaningfully an incredible way to bridge that gap where on-ramping and off-ramping, bless you,
thank you,
is a big source of friction for many people. And this just makes it many steps easier and, in theory, a lot less expensive. One of the major limitations of on and off-ramping from crypto to fiat is fees. Doesn't matter where you do it, whether they're regulated or not, it's insanely expensive to do it. You pay extreme spreads selling the assets relative to what you should probably pay. And then you pay these incredible fees. Like we talk about crypto addressing the fee problem in TradFi, yet the fees for doing everything are many orders of magnitude higher in cryptocurrency. So, I mean, as with any emerging space, we're going to figure out revenue models and we'll figure out how to make optimizations. But anyways, really cool. I don't want to go down a huge rabbit hole here. I think this is really cool. It's a big step for many users. It being a Visa, incredible. It's worth noting, I don't want to poo-poo on this. I mean, again, Monolith did it a few years ago in the UK. They did get shut down. So now Gnosis being able to do it in Europe and now doing it in a licensed way in America, I think is really interesting, and probably should be Should be huge. So I'm going to use it. I'm definitely going to be an early adopter.
Absolutely. I think this is also exciting because Gnosis is a well-known name with a good reputation. So we already
security and safety of assets. That's their whole shtick.
Yeah, exactly. So we already know that you're going to be like a safe user, and we know that they have security measures in place and that kind of thing. Whereas, Worldcoin is getting exactly the opposite reputation. So same idea is you can own your crypto and you can use it as you want. And then with Worldcoin, you can scan your iris instead of your Visa card. But Worldcoin is blowing up, even though it's being shut down in so many countries.
Yeah. So this is puzzling to me. I mean, I've been a fairly vocal critic of Worldcoin. I think it's kind of, I think the idea sounds romantic, but its actual implementation carries a lot of risk, I think, for individuals, for data, for identity. Like there's so many potential risk vectors here. Now, I think what's driven this to its excitement is Sam. I mean, he's obviously a charismatic tech entrepreneur in the sense that, I mean, he built OpenAI effectively and turned it into a multiple billion-dollar company. So he's a good steward, I suppose. Where I struggle with this is I'm not sure that there's actual validation of product market fit at all. I think it's just giving people free shit to get them to do something and continuing to build. It's kind of like a little bit of a Ponzi. Now, having said that, if they can get to a critical mass while it's still a Ponzi, it might in fact sustain itself. I just don't know about that.
People are excited about Worldcoin also because of Sam Altman, right? Like you said, he's charismatic, but Worldcoin has a huge price increase. I think it's 42% over the weekend, and that people think that
2x almost over the last week.
190 over the week, but 42 in 24 hours. Yeah. So, but Worldcoin it's not part of OpenAI. And so OpenAI launched Sora, which is their new video thing, which is pretty cool. You should check it out. But that launched, and everyone's like, oh, well, if that's what Sam Altman is into, is Worldcoin, and he has success with Sora, we should obviously do that. It's very Elon Musk. It's very Doge, right?
Yeah. It's kind of like you get these charismatic leaders that, we give a cape to and just assume that they're going to be Superman and save the world. I mean, if I say this a lot, if I have to bet on someone, I'm much more inclined to bet on someone who's done it and succeeded in the past than I am to bet on someone that has never done it before. Does that mean that somebody that's never done it before won't be successful? Absolutely not. But the probability is a lot higher that if they've done it before, they can probably do it again. So I get it. I get why people bet on Elon. I get why people bet on Sam. The problem with the thing with Worldcoin is, first of all, it has nothing to do with Sora. So all this speculation that it's tied somehow to Sora's release, it makes absolutely zero sense to me. I think it's purely it's just speculation. People are like, well, Sam's involved. It's probably going to go bananas. He's probably going to come out with some crazy partnership announcement, which he probably can. He's got relationships that most of us don't. But I don't know.
Worldcoin is like Cheese Whiz. It doesn't have any actual use for you, and it's not really that good for you, but it sure has personality.
So I think Cheese Whiz is miserable for you. It's not just not good for you. It's actually quite bad.
Yeah, I think having your iris scanned by a company in a booth in India is probably also really bad for you.
So I think this partially depends on perspective too. So if you were living in a country where there's very little access to identity, to banking, to normal societal infrastructure, Worldcoin actually does solve in some ways a lot of those issues. It provides a solution for those issues, but it introduces other complexities. That has been my criticism. So if you're already in a country that can't get their poop in a group well enough to have banking infrastructure and national identity systems so that you can have an ID and that you can have a bank account and that you can function like a normal member of society, if they currently don't have that stuff, what makes you think that they've got the political structures, organizational structures to even maintain anything like Worldcoin? And the argument is, well, they can't, so Worldcoin's going to.
Right.
Yeah, but Worldcoin still has to play by the rules of said country and still has to abide by the demands of said countries, which is where I think wherein lies the problem, in my opinion. And that is, okay, well, you can stay here. You're making X millions a year. per year off of us. You can stay here, but we need to see all the transaction history of every single person that has a registered account with you. And now, again, that's the same thing that the SEC says to Coinbase.
Regulation.
What?
Regulation is here.
Well, yeah, like it's just one of those things. But regulation in one country will feel different than the same regulation in another, right?
Sure.
I mean, you have to provide all that stuff to the IRS, and we just accept it because we're in America, and you just got to do what the overlords say. It's the same thing in all these other small dictatorial countries. It doesn't matter. They're still the country. Don't trust Worldcoin. That's right, Ascending Man. I mean, again, people are going to make money off of it. I'm hopeful for the sake of the space and for the sake of narrative that Worldcoin does hit product market fit validation in some sort of scale. They would need some massive partnerships, I think. But if anybody can do it, I think Worldcoin can. I'm not investing. I'm not using it. Prove me wrong.
Are you going to get Neuralink, though?
Neuralink? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Fuck
Good
yeah.
job. One of the things that's interesting about Worldcoin is they think that they're going to be future forward by having something really simple. So you scan your iris and you can pay for things with your iris, or your identity is tied to your iris, or what have you. But we are seeing other organizations, especially within the DeFi space, but in the blockchain space in general, try to have really difficult solutions instead, because we, in some ways, I think that something really difficult and complex is more novel. And if it's more novel, it hasn't been done before. So Meta DAO right now is putting forward this new idea about governance and governance within a DAO and how to increase their token value. And some people think that it could entirely reshape human civilization, which I think is a little bit of a strong point for.
So I like projects like this because it's the only way we see progress, personally. Totally. I think there's been a lot of criticism over the years of how governance currently functions in its kind of primitive sense on chain, how we deal with on-chain governance, how that relates to corporate governance outside in the old world, the old way of doing things, and maybe how we can find a much better future for both things. And I think, there's been quite a few different structures, strategies. Vitalik speaks a lot about governance and different ways of voting, quadratic voting, and other things. So I guess all of this to say, we spent a great deal of money, and it was an incredible experience working with a group called Reverie. Shout out to Reverie. We spent a great deal of money in like 6 or 8 months, and we came up with a very comprehensive governance structure that I think is, again, the best of what currently exists, but long run, I just don't think we have the technical infrastructure to build this in a more sustainable and scalable way. I mean, some of the challenges that exist right now is asymmetry of motivations, who owns the tokens and why, who can vote, who can't vote, why, what does that weighting look like? Does someone that was given 1 million tokens early on, should they have the same voting power as someone that purchased 1 million tokens for $1 million? I don't know. I don't know the answer to all of these things, but there's a lot of ways that these votes can somewhat favor certain minority groups, not minorities like we think of in society, but minority groups in terms of their ownership percentages. There's a lot of ways that they can find those people being favored significantly over others. And then you get one of the challenges with democracy as a general rule is you get uninformed people voting. Sure. And their vote counts just like the informed people's vote. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get informed consensus of a direction. But if most of the consensus is not informed, you have problems. Anyways, I'm going down a rabbit hole here. My point with this whole thing is I don't know if Futarchy is gonna work, but I'm really excited that people are trying something, because otherwise it's left to us in individual protocols to try to innovate on governance, which is somewhat secondary or even tertiary to our actual vision and thesis and value proposition. That should be a service that we can bolt on.
Mhm.
in my opinion. It doesn't need to be bespoke to each protocol. Eventually, it maybe shouldn't be bespoke to each protocol. And then we can have a little bit more trust in some of them being battle tested and so on and so forth. Anyways, I think this is great. I don't know enough about Futarchy to even give an opinion on how it's planning to function. But
people seem to believe in it though, and it isn't novel in that it's new. It's just novel in that it hasn't actually been tried. So the paper that it comes from was written in 2007 by Robin Hanson. I'm going to link it in the YouTube later. So if you want to read it, just scroll down, click in the description. But I think that it's interesting that it's had time to sort of resonate with people. People have had time to think about it. But what's really interesting is that companies believe in it too. And so to show that they like what's going forward, for example, Pantera Capital is looking at buying $50,000 worth of Meta just to show that they believe in this potential different type of governance.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, governance as it currently stands is not really meaningfully and scalably effective. There's a lot of things left to be desired. I'm just excited that people are trying something new or new to blockchain.
I think it's cool to see how people or companies can work together in different ways as well. Because, for example, buying tokens is quite different. Well, still a bit different than buying shares. And it's also very different than a merger and acquisition, but it can be a signal. It can be this like social sentiment of, hey, we like what you're doing. And also we might go in this same path.
I see what you're doing here.
Yeah, you love it. But in a more traditional sense, Yuga Labs has emerged and acquired with Proof. So if you're not familiar with Proof, they have NFTs like Moonbirds, they have Mythics, they have Oddities. I think they have some of the Grails. Proof is a pretty big NFT company, but Yuga's bigger. So Yuga has acquired them and taken on 15 of their staff.
Yeah, so this is an interesting move. I'm surprised we didn't see more of this, honestly, in the bear. It was actually a thesis I had going into the bear that this is going to be one of the first times that we're actually going to see meaningful M&A activity in the space. And we didn't see pretty much any.
Yeah, I was surprised.
So I was
we had that one in Canada, right, where the 3 had to.
Yeah, but that was only because of regulation. I don't think that had anything to do with opportunity. This, I think, is smart. This is what happens in business generally. You can't always afford to innovate in every direction. So you wait until somebody has proven something and you think you can add value. Then you buy it from them, add said value, increase its revenue, and happy days. I mean, Yuga obviously being who created Bored Apes, and then they acquired the IP for Punks. They manage 2 of the largest NFT properties in the space, of course, under Yuga Labs direction. I think this is great. Moonbirds was a wicked collection in the bull. Everybody loved it. It had a lot of fanfare. It had a really good community. And then they had some missteps over the last couple of years and different things with the community and little spats, which generally happens when the price goes way down. People find other things to publicly complain about. Anyways, I think this is good. It's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Moonbirds. Hopefully it revitalizes the price. I'm not sure what the future of PFP style NFT projects is. But I think Yuga is being very strategic in terms of the nostalgia and the types of acquisitions they're making. It's the OGs with money in the space that own these.
I think this is a good test for them, though, to try engaging with different types of communities, because Bored Apes was a particular type of community. CryptoPunks is a particular type of community, but this allows them to put their hands on a few more things and see what that engagement might be like, or how they might be able to build communities differently, or how they might be able to reach slightly different demographics. Yeah. Probably a good move. They're also keeping on their original CEO of Proof as an advisor so that they don't totally miss out on what has already been built.
The magic that's been there. Yeah. I mean, I think this also opens up Yuga exposure to a smaller purchase value client and user. Like Moonbirds are much cheaper than Punks and Bored Apes. So I think it just gives them another price point also of user acquisition that they can focus on. I mean, it will be interesting to see what Yuga does with all of their IP in a sense. Like there's been so much talk about this Bored Ape metaverse and all this other crap, whether it actually becomes meaningful or valuable. I guess we'll find out. But it could be interesting to see. Maybe you'll see all three of them in a metaverse, or maybe there's some interaction between them that might be interesting. I'm not sure. I struggle with the PFP NFTs. That's no secret to anybody that has watched the pod for a while. Everything I buy has no value essentially, or immediately goes down after I buy it. And all the shit that I could have bought but decided not to goes gangbusters. So I'm not an authority on NFTs, so please don't take what I'm saying here with any amount of seriousness. That being said, I think many investors that were willing to throw $1 million at an Ether rock are going to think twice after what happened this last cycle, the way that values.
I think NFTs will have a different utility now. Like you said, people can't sell them anymore if they have a PFP NFT. So what can they do it? They're looking for different utility. They're looking for different value, and that might be found in the community engagement. Yeah.
The only challenge with that is, where does the project capture so much value?
Yeah.
Like that, currently, that's how these projects make money, is royalties off reselling, off the reselling of the NFTs, right? They make the initial.
Maybe they'll just try having more emojis in their group chat.
Well, this is interesting because natural language processing it is not new, but obviously with the emergence or the greater sophistication of AI, I mean, AI is not really a point in time, but rather a concept. And I think with the emergence and greater sophistication of AI, we're going to see much more accurate and incredible natural language processing, social sentiment platforms and products. And one thing that has become abundantly clear is that acronyms, jargon, and emojis are becoming more and more and more prevalent in colloquial conversation. And so, especially social media, especially text messages, short form conversation.
I actually read this morning that daily Facebook Messenger sees over 5 billion emojis daily.
That doesn't surprise me at all. I probably send 1 billion of those. But joking aside, I think this is an interesting way to actually track it. Probably better than purely text-based NLP was.
Absolutely.
Because there's very few inferences made from emojis.
But we already know that sentiment is what is telling us about success of the market, right?
Right.
And that is exactly what this is doing, but in a way that cuts through irony and sarcasm and jokes and uncertainty, because nobody sends a happy face emoji when they meant sad face. So
not usually. Maybe a winky face.
Or like maybe there's a little bit of uncertainty between how millennials and Gen Alpha are using like the sweating guy. But
I learned about Gen Alpha like 2 days ago. I didn't even know what that was. I think you told me, or someone did. I was like, "What's Gen Alpha?" And who gets to be Gen Beta?
I know that's one I don't like.
Anyway, I think this is interesting. I think it'll be a lot more accurate. The assumptions that are made from an emoji are a lot less than the assumptions that are made from a sentence. That can be made from a sentence. So I think it's interesting. Its predictive value is also what's interesting to me.
Yeah.
It's all fine and dandy if we look at something in hindsight and say, oh, okay, this tells us why that happened. Cool. Yes, I have more insight to what happened, but it doesn't help me next time making decisions in advance. And so if this does, in fact, prove valid, could be interesting.
Well, 2 bots already have been yielding positive returns on Bitcoin trades by looking at emoji sentiment in public forums over the course of 30 days each. So that's a pretty interesting experiment. I'm happy to see what comes out of that. I'm happy to see how they might scale that.
Again, it's really easy to do this when you know that there's a whole bunch of other kind of converging circumstances that are also leading to this. Like, it's to say, okay, what is the sentiment of Bitcoin? I don't need to do any bots or any bullshit to tell you that the sentiment in the last little bit has been positive. Like,
okay. The other thing that's kind of cool about this, for real. So emojis have existed since 1999. They were invented or brought out to the public in 1999. Is that in crypto, we are working on this global scale. So although lots of people are speaking English, there are still a lot of language barriers and That means that sometimes language becomes oversimplified or words are getting used incorrectly. And it can be difficult as a machine to understand what the sentiment is because you're not seeing the actual emotion. So emojis are overcoming some of this language barrier that we also experience on our forums and Telegram chats and trading and so on and so forth. And so they think that using emojis for any sort of sentiment prediction will overcome some of that uncertainty or some of those mistakes that people make when trying to communicate in a language that is.
Well, yeah, and emojis are universal generally, most of them anyways. So I mean, you don't have translator issues and all of that crap. Like if somebody says something and then they put a love or a heart behind it, you can generally imply the tone, right? You figure what the tone is. Anyways, I think this is cool. What will really matter to me when I care about it is when you get real time updates. Like if I can look at a dashboard or if I get an alert on my phone that says sentiment just went from negative to positive across.
Absolutely. That'd be super cool.
Like that'd be amazing. But yeah, I can definitely see this being
okay. So we already know that Bitcoin sentiment is up, and then these emojis showed us that Bitcoin sentiment is maybe more up, but we have the halving coming up. We like to talk about it once a week just so that you remember that it's coming, and that historically we see there's kind of like a pre-bull before the halving, so you should be preparing yourself for that. And then what happens after the halving is people try to dump. So
I've had a lot of people in my personal network that have been very quiet for the last couple of years, coming out of the woodwork, asking questions about Bitcoin and saying, "Oh, I sold my Bitcoin at 41. This is like this week I got this. I sold my Bitcoin at 41,000. I had a target of 35 to buy it back." I'm like, based on what? Like, what makes you think it's going to go down to 35? It could.
Yeah.
But like everything that we know about the current environment suggests that it's not going to go down, at least for very long. If it does, there's always blips. Anyways, I think the suggestion here is stick with your unemotional trading strategies. Keep your risk management intact. Don't try to chase returns or chase gains or chase anything. If you're DCAing, keep DCAing in. And when you exit, DCA out. I know it's not sexy. It doesn't sound sophisticated, but it is from a probability perspective, it is the best way to.
Now, if you want to make emotional decisions, here's some information for you. Bitcoin rallies typically 32% 60 days ahead of the halving. The first halving was November 28th, 2012. At that time, 3 months up to the first halving, the Bitcoin price was pretty low, between $10 and $12. And then after the halving, like right after the halving, the price peaked at $1,100. That was so long ago. We're talking about it in the thousands and thousands, right? The second halving was July 9th, 2016.
Interesting data points, though. When it hit 1100 in November 2013, I think it went down sub 100 after that. Right. So I mean, Bitcoin, we got to remember, like everybody's like, "Oh, if I would have bought Bitcoin at $1, yeah, you probably would have sold it at $5 because that's what most people did." Totally. I mean, thinking that anybody meaningfully held Bitcoin from day one till now, or not anybody, but that the majority of people held Bitcoin from early on till now, is probably near zero, because there's
your FOMO was too strong. You sold too early.
Well, and then Mount Gox happened. We all thought that might end Bitcoin and crypto. Quadriga or whatever the hell it's called in Canada happened. We thought that might be a big blemish. I mean, FTX collapsed. We thought that might, but
it's still going. So the second halving was July 9th of 2016. This one is interesting because the bull really hit after this halving. So before this halving, the price was as low as $650. And then a few months to a year after the halving, we were in the tens of thousands of dollars. So by December 2017, we saw Bitcoin at 20K. So as we said, there's usually a little bit of a pre-bull, and then there's a big dip, and then there's a big bull after that. Now that's what's gone on for those two. The third halving on May 11th, 2020 found something very similar, where they started at a fairly low price between $8,000 and $9,000 in March. And then in May, it went up. And then in April, it went down. And then in April 2021, so almost one full year later, we found an all-time high of $64,000. Of course, there are other contexts that you need to consider here. This isn't exclusively due to the halving, but I'm trying to hammer down that you need to listen to JD in this instance and not trade with your gut, because the price is going to fluctuate a lot around and during and then after the halving?
Yeah, I would say stay away from leverage in general. I would say stay away from perp futures in general within a couple of months on either side, or at least a month on either side, because the volatility will be unexpected generally. So the thing to keep in mind is that, I mean, just because the information age is here and we have access to a lot of this information, so does everybody else.
Precisely.
So the fact that we can all see what has happened in the last, 3 or 4 halvenings and use that to kind of predict or be a bit of a template for what to expect this time with a different fractal, so to speak. So it's not the same magnitude, most likely. It's probably not going to go for 6x or 7x from the halving. It might, but I doubt it. And so we just got to be careful. There's a lot of game theory that's involved, right? If everybody thinks that, okay, it went 5x last cycle, it might go 4x this cycle or whatever. Everybody's going to be trying to exit around that 4x, right? And it's impossible to know what that is. So you have to make strategic, unemotional, risk-managed decisions and just stick to them. That's my advice. I'm going to stick with it. Easier to say than it is to do. I'm not immune to screwing this up.
Well, especially when there's so many exciting things going on. Gnosis launches a self-custody card that you can use in Visa, or you went and got your iris scan by Worldcoin, and then you're like, maybe I'll invest in some meta tokens so that I can participate in this weird governance cycle. And then you're like, the halvening is coming up. There's so much going on right now. It's really positive. We haven't had this positive market sentiment in, it feels like forever, but in like a couple of years. So I think it'd be easy to make a FOMO decision right now.
We can probably wrap up by saying, you're always going to miss out on things. You're always going to invest in duds.
That's okay.
Don't stress about either. Just make smart, consistent decisions. The key to success in any investable space is time in the market. As long as you survive to continue investing, continue taking profit off the table, you're going to be fine. Are you going to miss a lot of runs? Absolutely. There's tens of thousands of tokens in the market. You can't possibly understand all of them. There's going to be some that are going to go bananas that you're not a part of. Worldcoin went 2x in the last week. I'm not a part of it. So I think people just get too caught up in that FOMO. And hopefully by watching Go FUD Yourself, Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, a live show, we can help you get rid of some of that FOMO and stop trying to chase gains. Because almost invariably, by the time there's FOMO,
it's too late.
Opportunity's gone. It's too late.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, with that, we can end and say, Kiara, go FUD yourself.
Go FUD yourself.
Later.